Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. A few housekeeping issues before we get started. Just wanted to let you know that within 1 week, all attendees will receive an email with materials and recording of today's webinar. Uh, all attendees we have placed on mute just so we have the best sound possible, but please feel free to type your questions into the question box. We will respond to them as time allows, and if we don't get to something, we will certainly follow up with you as well after the event, or you can feel free to email us directly. We'll make sure that we have everyone's email available. Live caption is also available for those who wish to utilize it, so please take advantage of that feature if you choose to do so. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Julie Lammer, Senior Vice President of Government Relations and Advocacy for American Student Assistance. And we're honored to host this forum today with our good friends from Mentor. American Student Assistance is a national nonprofit committed to helping young people know themselves, know their options, and make informed choices to achieve their education and career goals. We provide students with tools and resources, both digitally and in person, to help them explore and experiment with a wide range of options ahead of them so that they can better plan for their education and career path. We also advocate for policy changes like the Youth Workforce Readiness Act and other legislation that we'll mention towards the end of this, that increase opportunity for youth to explore career options prior to leaving high school. However, as we open up a world of opportunity to youth, we know that those options are not the same for all students. COVID-19 has once again highlighted the massive inequalities that exist in our nation, shining a light on the realities of what many young people face on a daily basis just to receive a quality education and find their path forward. We face an enormous challenge helping young people engage with their education and plan for their future while simultaneously managing the stress of COVID-19, the racial injustices in our country, feelings of isolation, and challenges with remote learning. We know that one tactic that has proven successful in helping youth engage is to link classroom education to real-world experience and help youth understand that the skills they are building have utility beyond high school. Work-based learning reinforces the relevance and authenticity of learning experiences for students, has proven to increase students' persistence, graduation, and employment rates, with notable gains for students from underserved racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Has positive impacts on students' social development and critical skills, such as interpersonal competencies and leadership, and being able to apply theoretical concepts to practice. Finally, work-based learning also helps to crystallize work plans and workplace identity, and allows students to begin to build the social capital that will both support them while working, but will also help as they seek new employment opportunities. With 50% of jobs still coming through personal connections, it is vital that young people have the opportunity to build social capital early. And it is not, as Julia Freeland-Fisher of the Clayton Christensen Institute says, that a child's network, his reserve of social capital and ability to bank on that capital for support, advice, or opportunity down the line remains largely determined by random luck. One way to ensure that these opportunities are not a matter of random luck is to expand access to high quality work-based learning opportunities, either through in-school programming or summer opportunities. Mentor and ASA convened a panel in June of 2020 as service providers committed to continue summer programming despite COVID shutdowns and pivot opportunities to virtual models. Today's conversation will in part allow us to check in with some of those service providers and hear both lessons learned and improvements that will be made to programming for summer of 2021. As COVID restrictions begin to lessen, we will hear from providers as they pivot back to what is a new normal, really, and how they are taking advantage of advances made during COVID to improve programming for the long term. To start the discussion, we have remarks from Chytania Brown, the president and CEO of Employ Milwaukee. Employ Milwaukee is the Milwaukee Work-Based Development Coordinator. Mayor Tom Barrett of the City of Milwaukee has been a stalwart champion of youth employment and work-based learning, starting Earn and Learn Milwaukee over 15 years ago to prepare young people in the city to enter the workforce through authentic work experience with local business, nonprofit, and community and faith-based organizations. Youth living in the metro Milwaukee area between the ages of 14 and 24 can apply for this program. To tell us a little bit more about the program, I turn it over to Chytania Brown.
Hello, I'm Chytania Brown, President and CEO for Employ Milwaukee, the workforce development board serving Milwaukee County. The city of Milwaukee has had a Earn and Learn Summer Youth Employment Program led by our mayor, Mayor Tom Barrett, for the past 15 years. And I'm proud to say over those past 15 years, we've served over 15,000 youth through our Earn and Learn programs. Over 90% of our young people are young people of color, coming from high poverty zip codes with high unemployment rates as well in those zip codes. Our young people work anywhere from 20 hours per week, 6 to 8 weeks. We target those young people between the ages of 14 and 21. Research has shown the importance of summer employment. Research has shown the potential for positive impact by young people going through a summer work experience. We've seen through this research that young people who participate in a summer work experience tend to be higher wage earners as they grow up. They have higher graduation rates. Our communities are stronger because of young people being able to contribute to their communities. They're able to help their families. We see a decrease in youth violence when young people are working. And taxpayers save because investments in youth, this is investing in youth in a proactive way to have long-lasting impact on economic prosperity as it relates to through careers and wages of young people giving back. I also want to say that I'm passionate about youth development. This is something near and dear to my heart. My very first job when I came to Employ Milwaukee was to be a step-up coordinator. I worked inside of the high schools, working with young people to move them on a path to something positive. And summer employment was a portion or a piece of the job that I did. And it pleased and warmed my heart to see every year young people getting prepared and coming back and receiving that first paycheck. Where we're located at here in Milwaukee, we're located in the inner city, one of those zip codes that has high poverty, high crime. And to be able to see young people who are not old enough to start working, but come up to our shop every summer, wanting to know, are they old enough to finally be able to get that summer job? And to see those young people actually, when they become of age, come back, get that first summer job, get that first paycheck, and just you can see them smiling and gleaming to have money of their own or monies to be able to contribute to their household where their families may be in need, and then being able to give back or just being able to earn money to have those things that young people enjoy, such as buying their own clothes, buying their own school supplies, helping their parents out to where they get to choose and get to have money of their own to do those things that we all like to do when it comes down to having our own money. And here at Employ Milwaukee, we continue to build off the success of Earn and Learn through our Office of Career Exploration. We have an office where there's year-round programming that helps to innovate, has cutting edge while maintaining the components that are foundational to youth success, such as youth gaining their high school diplomas, becoming job ready, counseling that includes trauma-informed care, connection to post-secondary options, whether it's college or occupational skills training that leads to a good job. And that's the importance of young people having the opportunity to be exposed. Exposure is key for our young people, and summer work experience provide that. It provides young people who's never worked before the opportunity to work, those whose work continue to gain experience to network. That's a good component, a big component of what young people gauge and enable, and then the exposure. Exposure is key for our young people and having an understanding of what it is they enjoy and what it is they absolutely do not enjoy. I see no work experience as a bad experience because there's something to learn from them all. And again, I thank you. I'm Chytania Brown, President and CEO of Employ Milwaukee, serving Milwaukee, the Workforce Development Board serving Milwaukee County. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chytania. And we will now turn over to our panelists. So thank you all for being with us here today. Really looking forward to this discussion. I am going to sort of introduce you all individually. I think I'll start with Aviva Baff from the Clubhouse Network. Aviva is the Senior Project Manager for the Clubhouse Network. So Aviva, if you want to start, maybe just tell folks a little bit about your program, what it is you did last year, how you're adapting it again this year. I know you were part of our discussion last June, while as you were about to do a summer virtual program. How did that go? What were the things that you that really worked well? What would you have done differently this year? And how are you helping kids adapt to this kind of environment this summer?
Hi, everyone. As Julie said, Aviva from the Clubhouse Network, and we are based out of Boston, but we have a network of 100 after-school mentoring programs focusing on technology in about 20 countries. And what happened last year and what did we learn is huge. If you go to the next slide, I'll quickly just tell you about our program. It's similar to many programs. The youth do some learning and then they have a paid summer internship. I think the unique things about our program is that they do learning in two areas: workforce readiness skills and technology skills. And they do that for most of the school year, and then they receive their paid summer internship over the course of the summer. And so last year, we, much like everyone, were scrambling, to be honest. And we tried to set some parameters, but we really felt, gosh, if you can get anything in, great. We, we had standards all over the place because we just wanted youth to have some opportunities. Whereas this summer, we're in a different position. And although last summer I remember saying, there's no way we'll have to worry about this next summer. And here we are, we're still worrying about virtual versus in person and so forth. But last summer we were successful. Our youth did internships, but a lot of times instead of having an internship outside of their site where they do mentoring in the program, a lot of times we did a sort of internal internship. So our real key takeaways that we found to be a success or that we wanted to change, if you go to the next slide, the first thing, we were flexible last summer and we realized we really need to be flexible this summer, but right now we have the benefit of planning in a way that last summer felt like scrambling. So we are still being flexible, but we have set more concrete parameters this year. So there's still a little more flexibility around program requirements, around ourselves, around our partners, in terms of the number of hours, the work schedule, in-person, hybrid, virtual, all that's okay. So we've got a lot of flexibility around that. And I would say that that was important last summer, but is even more, not just important, but more valuable this summer because we have planned in flexibility as we've planned the program. And the next slide is around communication. We found last year, we realized we didn't have great communication strategies with our youth. We didn't need to communicate when we all saw each other as much. We didn't need to have the two-way communication as much. And so a big shift for this entire program year and specifically for this coming summer is around having very regular ability to have two-way communication with the youth and the employer and the program and their mentors. Next slide, please. And then we realized that we have to prioritize mentoring in a slightly different way than we used to. So during the learning, the knowledge and skill building section of the program, they develop the youth develop a very strong mentoring relationship with their facilitator. And then that shifts a little bit over the summer. They still would talk and meet with their facilitator, but they developed strong mentoring relationships at their employer. And what we've realized for this coming summer, based on last summer, is that this summer we need to keep that facilitator youth mentoring relationship a little more active, because so many youth are doing hybrid and virtual. So they're not seeing and developing the same strong bonds. So we also need to work with employers to focus on mentoring in a different way, talk about the value of doing it even if you're not seeing someone. But what we've done is we've prioritized the already existing mentoring relationship over the summer period in a way that gives it more presence versus how we've done in the past. And the next slide is around what we are doing this coming summer and we already know for beyond. So we actually have really reassessed and begun to redesign the program, thinking of some of the foundational things that we want to focus on that came out a little bit because of COVID. So those are, you know, opportunities in addition to challenges. And then we know that this summer we have virtual, hybrid, and in person, but we also know that the parameters and the flexibilities that we have this summer, we actually find engage more employers, engage more youth, and provide opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. That could be finding a great employer match, even though they're not local, and being able to facilitate that virtually. So regardless of COVID, thinking through strategically about how to keep that in place for this summer 2021 and beyond. Those are kind of the big next steps, big takeaways that we had based on last summer. And the next slide just shows my contact information. And thank you for asking this important question, Julie.
So thanks so much for that. Just following up onto that last point, do you find that you have more opportunity for expansion of your program with some of the virtual options that you've put in place, or are you keeping it about the same program size? So we lose Aviva. Okay, we may have lost Aviva there. So let's move on to Nina if we can. And talk a little bit about Mentor Rhode Island, or sorry, Skills for Rhode Island's Future. So Nina Panday is the Executive Director of Skills for Rhode Island's Future. She was also with us last year and talked a little bit about the opportunities to move Skills RI from the in-person model that had been in the summer of 2019 into a virtual model for 2020. A lot of good work I know was done in Rhode Island around in the last summer. So maybe need to just talk a little bit about some of the work that you did to make last summer possible, and what were the big takeaways that you had that have informed your program delivery for this year.
Certainly. Thank you, Julie, and hello to everybody. And I have to say, to hear Aviva and hear the challenges that they had, so many of those challenges were what we had in Rhode Island as well. Just a little bit of backdrop, Skills for Rhode Island's Future is a workforce intermediary. We do both adult and youth-based programs. And for our youth work, we serve as the statewide intermediary for a high school internship program that falls under the educational umbrella of Prepare Rhode Island. And last summer, we were faced, as everybody was, what do we do with our place-based internship program? And decided 5 weeks away from our start date that we would pivot to a virtual model. And because that pace, and Aviva, I heard you say this too, we had to make quick decisions, we had to move quickly. We pivoted our model virtually and we coined it Innovation Challenge, and we really focused around all things COVID related, because we heard loud and clear from our youth that they wanted an experience. We surveyed our youth, we surveyed our employer partners and said, if we were to continue, how do we make this meaningful? And what we heard was everybody knew that COVID was here, but they didn't know all the bells and whistles that COVID was going to bring in terms of the disruption, in terms of the educational disruption, the societal disruption, the economic disruption. And so I think everybody was grappling with it. And we said, instead of running away from it and trying to pretend it doesn't exist, let's hit it head on. And we had our employer partners come to the table with really robust problem statements that they were actually grappling with, and how to mitigate the fallout of COVID, whether that was pivoting to remote working or reopening up hospitals to visitations, or even how do we help the medical community detect COVID symptoms. And so our employer partners came to the table with really robust problem statements that our students were able to work on virtually. And we cohorted our students. We had roughly 500 students last summer with us, and we cohorted them into student-led corporations where we were teaching students leadership skills, business skills, but then also those critical thinking and problem-solving skills to help our employer partners find real-world solutions to real-world problems that they were dealing with. In our rush to pivot to the virtual model, I think there were many missteps along the way that we've been able to learn from, and we've actually gone back and run focus groups throughout this school year to gather more information from students and how to make our learning more engaging. The first was, I think we didn't take into account all of the support systems that we normally administer in a place-based model. I think we figured because it was virtual, a lot of those supports were not needed. And our program is designed where at least 50% of our students who participate need to be opportunity youth coming from identified zip codes that have high poverty areas and or low academic performance areas. And many of our students, as we were pivoting to virtual, we didn't take into account the digital divide that truly exists between the more affluent zip codes where students are born with technology to students not even having reliable Wi-Fi internet access. And so I felt like we had a summer of just constant iteration and putting out fires and figuring out how to support on the fly. And so that was one area that was a big, I don't want to say a misstep, but we didn't give enough attention to detail. We knew that they were going to need supports, but we weren't necessarily prepared for the amount of supports. And then also just keeping kids engaged who felt academically they were falling behind. And so we've mitigated a lot of that going into this year by operating career enhancement services and really preparing our kids for what the world what the world of work will look like for us this summer. So we're running things like Excel classes and Power BI classes, and we're running them in English and Spanish because we have quite a few ESL students who participate in our program, and making sure that they are comfortable with the skill sets that they're going to need to excel in our program. This summer, we're going to continue virtually. So those student supports was a big area for us. A second big area that we heard loud and clear is we didn't support our coaches and mentors the right way. We pivoted our model, and I think we just automatically assumed that the adults in the room would be able to figure this stuff out and navigate those turbulent waters. And we were wrong, and we saw that what were phenomenal mentors for us in the past were really struggling on figuring out how to authentically engage students in a remote working environment. And so one of the things that we're doing this year, and I'm so excited to be here today with our partners at Mentor RI, is we have formed a partnership where Mentor RI is going to also provide some technical support and assistance to our coaches and mentors, and really talk with them about the value and the importance of mentoring and how to do it effectively. And we don't have all the questions answered and how to be able to be effective being a mentor or coach remotely, but we know when we team up with Mentor RI, they have some learnings that they can share. And so we're going to be doing some professional development series with Mentor RI for our coaches and mentors as well, leading up to our summer of learning. Our program wouldn't be possible without our employer partners. We have over 170 employer partners. This summer, I'm excited. We already have our problem statements being developed, and we need our coaches and mentors to be able to help students really maximize their learning this summer. So again, two big takeaways from us were those student supports and mentor and coaches supports. And I can continue on because there are many more lessons, but to me, they boil down to those two.
That's great. That's really helpful. And just talk a little bit, Nina, about that you're not necessarily solving building a program just for this summer. Talk a little bit how this may be the foundation of a long-term model for how you do things, either in a hybrid way or remote way completely, and how leaning on technology allows you to sort of expand the offering that you initially had.
Absolutely. I think we went into last summer as an opportunity of learning, like what would work, what wouldn't work, would digital technology be our friends? And what we're learning is students are gravitating towards this, right? If it's engaging and authentic, and if it's prescriptive. We also heard from our students loud and clear, like, make us keep our videos on, hold us accountable. We want to be front and center. We want to feel like we are still working. And we've had students push back on us and say, Miss, you're working remotely. Are you being held accountable? And I'm like, of course I'm being held accountable. And they said, great, hold us accountable to the same expectations that you hold yourself accountable to. So we're learning from students what they want. we're also learning from students that they want this year round. And so we're trying to leverage and take advantage of what we're doing in the summer. And because of technology, we are actually working, and through funding from ASA, we're piloting in 3 high schools, rolling out next year, what some of these virtual learnings can look like, either in an after-school format or as a supplemental to advisory periods for our school districts that we're going to be working with, and really be able to contextualize learning to the local environment, and really having students understand the in-demand skills and jobs that exist here in Rhode Island, should they choose to stay here in Rhode Island. And so a lot of programs that we see that are kind of these big box programs don't necessarily have the local flair. And so I'd like to think that we will be able to bring some of that to the table and turn this summer model, this project-based learning model that's very rich with learning, and use it as projects that students can work on throughout their year. In fact, 2 of our problem statements this summer that students are going to get to work on, I'm so excited. One is with Rhode Island School of Design, where we want to make sure that students have access to really high quality arts engagement and arts learning. And a lot of our schools that, again, are high poverty districts don't have robust arts engagement. And so we're going to work with RISD, we're going to work with some of our high schools and figure out if we can develop high quality virtual curriculum that really gives everybody a peek inside a world-class art institution right here in Rhode Island, and use their museum as a playground for learning. And so really exciting stuff that's happening.
That's wonderful. Before I move on to Mentor RI, I just wanted to bring Aviva back into the conversation. The question I had for you, Aviva, is as you're looking at the different types of programming that you have rolled out both last year and this year, how has the use of technology in these, the fact that you are both in-person, hybrid, and virtual for some, allowed you to expand programming? Or are you really thinking about it just serving the kids that you have historically served?
It's a great question. It has expanded programming a little bit in terms of content, because things, I'm sure you all have this experience where you say, I could have been doing that all along. So we've gotten people from industries and companies and organizations to participate in content in our programs where they don't live near us, but it's okay now. Now it feels normal, it's normalized to us. So that's a content program expansion. And then in terms of access to youth, there have been a number of programs that have been able to recruit youth into the program, which they probably would not have before. They were just a little too far away, or the youth weren't looking for something. They were involved in other things, and now they were looking for something virtual. So we've kind of hit those 2 places, and I actually think that all of that will continue and should continue.
That's wonderful. Great. Thank you so much. So I would like to bring Jana Plinka into the conversation now. Jana is with Mentor Rhode Island. Jana, you heard both Aviva and Nina talk about the importance of mentoring, how challenging it was to really stand up rapidly an employer mentoring model, workplace mentoring, how to support that, how to do it correctly. And so talk a little bit about the partnership now that you have to support Skills RI this year, and what type of tools and resources that you believe are necessary to ensure that employers have the skills they need to be appropriate workplace mentors.
Sure. Thank you, Julie. And thank you, Nina, also for the lead in before. Virtual mentoring is, let's face it, it's not as ideal as an in-person face-to-face. At first blush, it can seem somewhat distant and impersonal, but even in person, when you match 2 people together for the first time, it can be awkward. So let's face it, any type of brand new relationship is going to take some time to develop. And what Mentor Rhode Island is bringing to the table, for Skills for Rhode Island, and really any type of situation, is that we provide training on relationship building skills. And that is the key to any mentoring relationship. You may be very good at your job and be very good as a supervisor, but when it comes to coaching and developing someone, sometimes you need that extra help. And, here I am to tell you that, even in a virtual world, this can succeed. Our curriculum, very high level, it's known as Connect, Focus, Grow. And both the mentors and the mentees go through the similar versions of it. And, what we do in the curriculum is we emphasize the need for mentoring in the workplace environment, and really at any level, and how that can make that experience much more productive, much more meaningful for both the mentee or intern, as well as the mentor or coach. And, the connect portion is just what it seems. We emphasize how relationships are formed and developed. Think of when you first met someone, you don't, develop an intimate relationship right away. It takes time. We teach people listening skills and how to ask open-ended questions. And while this seems very basic, when you're all of a sudden in a job as a coach, sometimes it can be intimidating. In the focus section, we help mentors and mentees develop that cultural awareness of one another and what they bring to the table. We talk about practicing cultural humility and knowing what, drives each of us and what our backgrounds are, and how that can affect someone's approach to something, whether it be work or a social situation. And then we also talk about something called, and I know we're all guilty of it, the ladder of inference. And, oftentimes we get a pool of data and information and we make assumptions about things. And sometimes we're acting on those assumptions and we don't necessarily know all of the facts. And that can really lead to danger down the road. Finally, the growth section, we really focus on that, growth mindset versus that static mindset where, opportunities are looked upon as opposed to obstacles, and where, people learn by, the criticism that they get, and rather that they are inspired by others rather than threatened by them. So it's all of that fostering, a strength-based perspective, where if you practice something, long enough and hard enough, you're bound to get better at it. The curriculum is fun. We utilize a lot of skill building exercises. And generally, I think 201, the mentors and mentees walk away, with a better idea of what a mentoring and coaching relationship should look like. It's not all about just getting the project done. It's growing and developing in that person's interests and sense of curiosity. And I can talk from personal experience in my 40 years of banking. We would often hire young people and very soon they would get disengaged or non-participatory. But when we started, assigning a mentor to them, and it wasn't necessarily their supervisor, but we would see a much more positive, productive experience. And let's face it, we want people to grow and develop so that they become productive members of society in their careers. So, this is all good for them in the long run. So how does this all translate to a virtual world of mentoring? It can be done. One of the first things is you just have to be diligent and organized and consistent so that you're having, regular periodic meetings with someone. When you think of a workplace where, you might meet by the proverbial water cooler, that's not going to happen in a virtual world. So you've got to set the time. I had an intern this summer, actually going back to just shortly after COVID first hit, and she was a college student, but we met every week at a set time, and we used all of the technology available to us, whether it was Zoom or what have you, and we shared work back and forth. So it can be done. It is a two-way street, so you have to be alert. And most important, your mentors and coaches have to have their videos on and make sure they're not, looking down at their cell phone while the mentee is talking. You have to journey along with them and make sure that they that their ideas are being served up and valued as well. So that's kind of, the high level approach to what we take. And, Mentor Rhode Island does a lot of coaching and training. And actually, we've been able to capitalize on the virtual world and been able to do a lot more training and coaching to other organizations and because of it.
That's
So-
wonderful. So Nina, can I just bring you back in for a second and ask, so this type of coaching and training of mentors was not something that was part of your programming prior to this, right? Was it, there was some general instruction given from Skills RI, but generally it was the employers took it on themselves to sort of be good mentors, and there wasn't really a structure around it. So I would say this is probably an added value post-COVID to your program.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, Julie, when we were in person, we would try to do a meet and greet with coaches and mentors. So before we launch our official internship program, we run a week of boot camp where we have coaches and mentors typically mingling, and it's a lot easier to do it when you're in person. But when we moved virtually, we neglected all of that. And so just having Mentor RI as a partner and being able to take the guesswork of how to do this, it was just really wonderful to have. And I'm hoping that not just this summer, but moving forward, Mentor RI will definitely be a part of our support system as we support coaches and mentors. And what was nice about what they were able to do, I mean, that's what they're built for, right? And so why not leverage the expertise of an organization who knows how to do this well, instead of us trying to recreate the wheel? And what they can do is provide those office hours and those technical support. So as coaches and mentors might be kind of chugging along or not really understanding how to best support their students, Mentor RI continues to support these coaches and mentors throughout the summer. We have office hours, we set up office hours for our students, but again, we fail to have office hours for our coaches and mentors. And it's just nice to be able to have a trusted partner at the table who can pick up those pieces and know that there's going to be this symbiotic relationship, and also, you know, this two-way communication, so we can mitigate challenges as they come in. So definitely overlooked in the past, will not be overlooked going forward. And just, again, great to have a trusted partner who knows this better than we do at the table.
That's wonderful. So I want to pivot now to Ellen Gardner, the Schultz Family Foundation. Ellen, I'd love to hear a little bit about the commitment that Schultz has made to workplace mentorship. And I know, Nina mentioned that they're looking to move their summer program to ensure that there's support for program year round. I know that's an area of interest for you as well. So maybe talk a little bit more about how these summer programs can really be the foundation for something that is integrated into a year-long model.
Yeah, I wanted to cheer when Nina said that, because we know that the young people need jobs year round, and summer employment programs are wonderful and a great way to connect young people to those first experiences. But I think we all agree they're insufficient. They're a great first step, but we know that the needs of young people, both to build their careers and to create some economic stability in their own lives, require more than a few months of employment. So first, I'll just say thanks for having me. I'm Ellen Gardner, Senior Program Officer at the Schultz Family Foundation, which is the private philanthropy of Sherry and Howard Schultz. So I'm admittedly, I think, bringing a different perspective to the conversation since I'm not actively running programs. And Jana, I was so happy to hear everything you said about Connect, Focus, Grow, because SFF is really pleased to support that program and has been doing that for the last couple of years. And I would just say broadly, so folks know about the foundation, the Schultz Family Foundation is focused on supporting young people as they transition from adolescence to adulthood so that they have access to economic mobility. We know and believe that window from about like 16 to 25 years old is a really critical stage for young people, and particularly young people from underserved communities. It's a time when they can either get stuck and risk disconnection from education or work, or find themselves underemployed even as first generation college graduates, or a time when they can really connect to high quality education or a meaningful first job and see their lives, blast off from there. And in fact, data shows that if a person in the United States doesn't find steady employment before the age of 25, they will earn 44% less over their lifetimes as compared to those who do. So we really hone in on this time as critical to creating economic mobility for people. We also know that, which I was just talking about, like we know that connecting a young person to a job, whether it's a summer job or a full-time job or education alone, like, okay, we got them a job, they're connected, pat ourselves on the back, we did it, that's insufficient as well. We need to be thinking about what supports we can put in place to make sure a young person is successful in a first job, doesn't become stuck in a first job and can move on to higher wage employment and more meaningful roles? What happens when a summer job ends, like we were just talking about, and they're not connected to school, and what do they do in September? And we at SFF really believe that mentoring, social capital, can really be part of the answers to some of those questions. In terms of just like lessons from the last year, I know, again, I wasn't instituting programs, but I will say that actually David Shapiro and the team at Mentor was actually my very first call when COVID really hit the US. And I should mention, I'm in Seattle, the foundation's located in Seattle. So if you remember back 15 months ago, we were the epicenter of COVID in the US. In many ways, we were ahead of the rest of the country in experiencing the first weeks of the pandemic. And so I called David because I wanted to understand what CBO partners and youth and families were experiencing on the ground so that we could pivot, the foundation could pivot our approach and resources to help and respond. And hearing from, David and partners across the country, we quickly pivoted in a way that, let's be honest, is rare and somewhat unnatural for many foundations to do, and tried to provide flexibility around deadlines for our partners, KPIs that our grants were focused on. We tried to connect partners to one another, like we connected Mentor to other folks in the industry because they had a virtual, sort of like white labeled virtual platform that other mentoring organizations could use. And so I think, we also obviously like allowed flexibility in our budgets and gave more money to folks who needed it. So just tried to pivot our approach and resources to help, as obviously flexibility was the name of the game in 2020. I certainly hope that some of that sticks in the philanthropic sector and the nonprofit sector as well, like that we're all more nimble and able to react to whatever may come our way. So that's a trend I think I definitely hope continues. And then I'd also say that I think like many others, doubled down on equity because we saw the disproportionate ways COVID-19 was and is affecting low income and BIPOC youth. And obviously, I think Julie, you mentioned in your opening remarks that both COVID-19 and the current racial reckoning in our country have laid bare the inequities that those of us who've been working in the field for a long time are familiar with. Just one other thing I'll say, and then I'll stop talking, is that we got a little bit lucky in that we had just started a partnership with Mathematica before, I think in late 2019, to lift up timely, in this case, monthly youth unemployment data, disaggregated by race, gender, age, and geography. I'll put a link to the data in the chat when I'm done talking. But because of that, just like lucky timing, we were really well positioned to track the impacts of COVID-19 on youth employment. And the data was staggering. Young people were more than twice as likely to be unemployed than adults. They were the first to lose their jobs. They are the last to get them back, like they're still not back at work. They work largely, many work in low wage frontline jobs where they didn't feel safe, especially at the beginning of the pandemic when PPE was so hard to come by. And then if you dig into the disaggregated data by race, gender, geography, you can see, I think even worse impacts and outcomes for BIPOC young people and females. So I think having that data is more validation that summer youth employment programs are important, but that this is a year-round issue. And I think that combined with obviously the data I think people already know around how many young people disengaged from education and didn't go on to post-secondary or left post-secondary institutions they were already attached to, I think just is increased ammunition for all of us to really be thinking about youth employment as a big area of investment. So I'll
That's
stop
great.
there.
It's super helpful. And you can answer this question, maybe others can jump in as well. I know, so you have a great source of data now that really highlights the problem. And I think what Aviva and Nina in particular probably struggle with is how do you use that data to ensure employers are taking action and really getting involved in helping to solve this problem? Because kids can ask for it all they want, but if there is not available opportunity to ensure that they have a quality experience to go to, then we will never be able to solve this problem. So how are you using that data to push employers in the right direction? And then maybe Nina and Aviva can jump in and talk about just how you have been reaching out to employers to make sure that they are engaging.
Sure, I'll take the first part, which is we try to get the data in front of employers in a lot of different ways. So one initiative that we partner with is the Hire Opportunity Coalition, which is a coalition of companies, major employers like Fortune 500 employers who have committed to hire, retain, and support opportunity youth in their companies. So big entities like Verizon and Starbucks and Hyatt. And so we have brought the team from Mathematica to that coalition and showed them the data to get them thinking about it. We've also brought Mentor to that coalition and briefed them on everything, all the programs, Connect, Focus, Grow, how to, the training Mentor provides around managing with a mentoring mindset. And many of those employers have connected with the Mentor team to sign on to doing that work inside their companies. I'd also say, just from where I sit and from hearing from employers, I would say if you are a mentoring organization, a service provider, I would say just really think about working together with the employers you do have partnerships with. So if young people, are struggling at work or even are facing great opportunities at work, they might be reaching out to your CBO because they have a long, trust-based relationship with you, whereas they don't quite know how to navigate things on the employer side. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and talk to an employer about those opportunities, about what your young person, the young person you work with, needs at work. And what I can tell you by participating in this coalition of employers is that they are hungry for those conversations. They're super strapped for time and resources. They're new to this work. And so any support that you can provide them, even if it's sort of ad hoc, they will eat up. They might not always be able to do everything you say. They definitely have constraints that they're dealing with and a lot of internal politics to work out. But I would just say, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and talk to the employer about what your young person specifically needs.
That's great.
And I would just add too, there's one thing with employers, that one word that you can say to them, and all of this aids retention. There's nothing more frustrating, having come from the business world, where you hire people, young or older, and you put all of this training and money into it, and then they leave. So for a better experience for both that new hire or that intern that will eventually become a permanent employee, and for the experience of business, this type of program, training, mentoring, coaching, it aids and improves retention.
Julie, if I could maybe jump in here too, and I want to just first, Ellen, say thank you to you and the Schultz Family Foundation for really taking some bold steps on making sure that these opportunities become year-round, because it is such a critical element of student learning, particularly for our opportunity youth. And as we continue to run focus groups in the pilot schools that I mentioned, that we're going to be rolling this out in there, 3 of our urban core areas, again, high poverty and low academic achievement. What we're hearing is students are not showing up because they need to work to help support their families. And so if we can build year-round opportunities where there is this movement towards economic mobility while they're learning in their areas of interest, to me, there's no better victory, right? To strengthen our education system, but also meet the families where they're at and making sure they have access to resources, because so many of our students, by the time they hit 16, 17, and 18, they sometimes become the primary breadwinner of their family and they just can't attend traditional school hours. So that is a definite need, and hope to continue to explore what that looks like here in Rhode Island. But another area that you hit on, which I couldn't agree with more, and it's what I love about our job at Skills for Rhode Island's Future, is employers are hungry for this and they don't know how to do it. And so being an intermediary, we get to take the guesswork out of the capacity and resource questions, and we get to build and design for our employers what that looks like. And then again, as our role as an intermediary, we try to leverage funding resources because we know year-round work costs money, whether it's actual cash to pay wages or the time of the individuals who are spending, mentoring and coaching and supervising these students. So we work with our state government to try to leverage things like work immersion dollars, where maybe 50% of wages are covered under a statewide grant or something like that, or in our case, get funding through the Governor's Workforce Board for our summer work and leveraging and braiding funding. So I think we need to get creative in how to, again, take the guesswork out of employers. When you go and you have the initial conversations, and again, we're up to over 170 employer partners in a small little state of Rhode Island. We have large and small. And the answer is always yes, but how? And so they're very interested, but they don't know the how. So we actually developed, and Julie, I know you know this well, Fidelity Investments came in and they gave us significant amount of pro bono resources for us to develop what's known as the Work-Based Learning Navigator here in Rhode Island, where employers can actually post opportunities that they're willing to provide, whether it's guest speaking opportunities or things like job shadowing or coaching and mentor or actually hosting interns. And we've given them an opportunity for a tiered service so that it doesn't seem so overwhelming initially. And you can enter just as a guest speaker, and we're hoping we get them hooked by time, and then they'll want to become hosting our interns, right? So we start small. It's like the crawl, walk, run model that we try to deploy with all of our programming. That said, we similarly have our educators post opportunities that they're looking for their students, because who better than teachers or folks on the ground who are seeing their students struggle say to us, you know, we want our students in class, we want this to happen. But when COVID hit, they were disengaged learning, they were out working, they were doing this. So we want that raw information. And so we're hoping, Julie, to one of your earlier questions, how does technology transform this work? We're using technology to kind of have a matchmaking program between our employers of what they're able to provide for opportunities and what our schools need. So we're really excited about that. But again, I think part of our job as the CBO managing this for the state is we need to help employers take the guesswork out of it. We need to be able to unpack it and get them to see a realistic plan forward instead of getting caught from day one saying, I don't have curriculum, I don't have time, I don't have resources, I'm not sure if it's high quality, I don't know if it maps back to educational standards. That is where we take 100% of that out. And then we also serve as the employer of record, so we mitigate any potential legal hurdles that some of our larger companies like, you know, Amgens of the world or Fidelities of the world or Bank of America's of the world might run into from a legal perspective. We take all the guesswork out and say, we just want you to give that rich, authentic experience, leave everything else to us. We seem to have something that's working. Let's see if we can now turn it into that year-round work and get employers to the table to support that.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that year-round piece is so critical. We often say, you know, we need to figure out more ways to get kids to learn through work instead of working instead of learning, which unfortunately has happened quite a bit now as kids disengage from school and are instead, you know, finding any opportunity they can to help support their families rather than the authentic opportunities that will move them in a career trajectory. So how do we match that a little bit better? That's great. So we are running up on time. I want to end with one final question to all of you. Just curious what your advice would be to others as they move their internship opportunities online. If there was one thing that you could have done differently, or you are planning to do this year, what virtual work-based learning opportunity would you like to have improved?
I guess, Julie, I can get us started. I would say go into this knowing you don't know everything, right? And know that you need to remain flexible and nimble and responsive and be prepared to pivot on the fly, and make sure you build in that time and resources, because a lot of times you don't know until you get into the middle of the programming what some of these challenges are. So make sure you allocate additional time and capacity and resources to be able to pivot. And again, for us, it goes back to us training the coaches and making sure that our coaches and the adults that are supporting our youth are properly trained so that our students can maximize their learning and get the best summer that they've had.
And I would say 100% what Nina just said, and I would add one layer to help all that happen is the piece of the way that we used to communicate and keep in touch and plan and execute has shifted. And so in addition to all the flexibility, et cetera, that need to communicate, I think, is more there as we see each other less, and particularly whereas before you communicated with the youth, now you need to communicate more and in different ways. And I think that they're obviously the youth were always at the center, but I think that the communication directly between the employer, mentors, youth, families is more, I don't want to say intense, but is more critical than it was in previous years because of the physical distance. So I'd say that is one thing I think is very tangible to focus in on and important.
Thanks, Aviva. Jana?
And I would say, certainly everything that people have said in terms of being flexible and making sure you have committed, authentic people, but also, focus on creating that safe, trusting space for the interns, because, this is their opportunity to explore and, really develop their own identities. And it's through these experiences that they're going to then, choose some potential path. And, this is really a key point in their lives, and you can have a big impact.
Thanks. And Ellen, the final thoughts from you.
I would just, echo everything everyone else said. And I would say, try to also find ways to have fun virtually, like bring folks together for, informal time as well. It doesn't have to be only based on the curriculum. One organization I work with uses Kahoot, like to start out meetings as a Kahoot subscription. And I think even finding interesting virtual ways to like show appreciation for between mentors and mentees. So I would just say, don't forget about the fun side of relationship building when it comes to virtual curriculum as well.
That's wonderful. So I'm going to turn it over to David Shapiro, President and CEO of Mentor, in just a moment. But before I do, I just wanted to highlight for folks a little bit of information about the Work Youth Force Readiness Act, which is a piece of legislation that ASA and Mentor are actively working to help support. It has been brought together really by Boys and Girls Clubs of America. It is an opportunity for a federal grant opportunity for really out-of-school providers to provide information, career readiness, and career exploration activities starting as early as the elementary school years through high school, and really support work-based learning opportunities. It is being introduced tomorrow by Senator Smith and Senators Wyden. Senator Smith and Senator Wyden on the Democratic side, Senator Collins and Graham on the Republican side, and in the House by Reps Harder and Fitzpatrick. So if you want more information about that, ASA and Mentor will both be sharing some information on social media. I encourage you to look at that and share it as widely as possible as we try to push for more federal resources for career exploration and youth work-based learning. So with that, I turn it over to David Shapiro, the wonderful president and CEO of Mentor, who has been such a great champion for all of these issues, and ASA really has loved the partnership that we've had with David and team to move some of these issues forward. So thanks so much, David.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be with you all. And what an amazing panel to follow, where all you have to just say is everything that needs to be said has been said. So I am really grateful to all of you, all of the perspectives. I'm grateful to Kelsey and Abby and Kaden on both our respective teams at Mentor and ASA who made this happen. Julie, for just being our partner all the time on the advocacy and policy front and carrying today so well and keeping us all on track and eliciting such great advice. To Aviva and Jana and Nina and Ellen, and also Chytania from Milwaukee. Just really grateful for all of your expertise and effort throughout the year. I think if there's one thing I would, call out today, right, it's what can happen in partnership. You heard Nina talk about, being an intermediary, leaning on another expert intermediary in our affiliate in Mentor Rhode Island. You heard Ellen talk about trust-based relationships and being able to respond to these generational and global events that happen to all of us and be the best partners for each other. You heard Aviva, talk about partnerships at Clubhouse between young people and adults. And we also heard about supporting the coaches, but we heard so much about partnership, intentionality, trust, humility, ingenuity, starting our relationships in certain ways that will evolve. All the things that really are the hallmarks of great mentoring relationships, but also allow us to create the stickiness that I think has become a hallmark of what we're looking for right now, right? How do we re-engage in school with purpose and belonging? How do we re-engage in the workplace? And instead of crowing, as you see the headlines right now about whether there are enough people for jobs or not, that's not really what it's about, right? It's about whether there's meaningful living wages, meaningful purpose and belonging, whether people see career paths. That's how we have employability. It's really not just about like, are there jobs are available or not? It's not about slots. It's more about what happens when you get to those slots. And so we have a chance to create relationship-centered workplaces where they're meaningful and where we keep evolving them. And I think while it is a hard task and while it is a remaking of our labor system, it's my belief, hearing from the experts that we did today and the partnerships that we're building, that we really do have a chance to use this moment as a portal to kind of remake the system and create relationship-centered workplaces as a business imperative and as a social justice imperative. So grateful to all of you. Signing off, hoping that this is a portal to something better that we all create together. And I know we're dedicated to that and appreciate the learnings from everyone who was on today, and know we'll get out more to all of you so that we can all follow up, make connections, and keep learning from each other and making this a better place to live for our young people and for all of us. So thank you so much. Thanks so much, Julie.
Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day.